We are presently in the countdown to the countdown. When we are prepping for Christmas, we call it Advent. We light Advent candles, and we each week, and we're starting to think about the birth of Christ. Actually, the Christmas season starts earlier than that because all the decorations start getting up pretty much right after Halloween. To the modern world, Christmas is the biggest holiday. Christ almost gets overshadowed with the presents and Santa Claus and all that. But in reality, the most sacred and most important holiday for Christians is Easter. And there's a time before that called Lent. When I first got here, now I grew up Catholic, so Lent was pretty important back to our family. But when I got here, I found out that most people didn't even know what it was. And there have become a tradition in a lot of the Protestant churches, just forget about that time, Easter will come whenever it gets here. Lent is 40 days, not counting Sundays, before Easter. It's a time to prepare our hearts and our minds to be ready for it. Now, a lot of people that hear about Lent say, well, you give up something. And just about everybody I know gives up candy. You know, for 40 days, I'm not going to eat any candy. I've had people give up chewing gum. I've had people try and give up cigarettes. They were always just giving up something or other. I've always encouraged people to add something in. Add in daily scripture reading. Add in a specified time of prayer. Add in just something extra you're going to do. Now, I've discovered a habit. I am a notoriously slow reader. That's one reason I've never done very good in school, because I could never get all the reading assignments completed. That little app you can get on your phone, it's called My Bible. I found out that I can hit the button, they'll read it to me. And I can read right along with it because it highlights what chapter they're reading as you go. And they talk about the speed that I read at. And in just 10 or 15 minutes, I can get all the way through one of the shorter epistles. And I've heard it, I've seen it, and I've read it. And sometimes I'll just read it out loud along with them. Just a habit that you could put in. But there's also a tradition during Lent of fasting. I've read a lot about it. There's quite a bit of scripture on it. And one of the things people think, well, I'll fast during Lent. I'll fast, and that way I'll lose weight. The bad news is, if you fast for a week, it'll come right back. I've done that. I've given up a whole week eating and figured, okay, I'm gonna, and within 3 weeks, it's right back where it was. So, even though it is good for your health, that wouldn't be the purpose of this fast. But let's look historically and biblically a little bit about it. Jonah, remember the guy that got swallowed by the fish? there's a lot of different lessons we can learn from that book of the Bible. But one of them is when he went to Nineveh, a pagan city, and started walking through that city, and it was a 3-day walk to get through that city. It was a huge place. And they were known for their cruelty. They were known for immorality. They were known for all of it. And God said, I'm going to destroy them. And Jonah didn't want to go there and tell them that, because he figured out for some reason God would change his mind and he'd be a fool, look like a fool. Well, you know, I have to look a little bit like a fool for somebody to be reconciled with God. I don't think it's that bad a thing. So Jonah wound up there. And he preached that message. He said, God is displeased with your lives and he's about to destroy you. This got all the way up to the king. And people had already started on their own. They didn't wait for a royal decree or anything like that. They had started fasting and praying. And eventually, and they were wearing, the king took off his royal robes, put on sackcloth. Most of the bags really aren't made of burlap anymore, are they? The feed sacks. But remember when they were all? How'd you like to wear a burlap bag for a week? No, not a pleasant experience. And then God said, no, okay, you've not only prayed and fasted, but you said you're turning away from your ways of cruelty and orneriness, and I'm going to forgive you. Jonah said, I told you were going to do that, but so he thought he was a lot like a fool again, but I wouldn't mind being that fool. In the book of Esther, we see she is in the proper position to approach the king. She was the newest bride of his many. And she had kind of become a favorite, but she hadn't been called upon for a while to enter his presence. That was a thing you really had to be called. You could not do on your own. And a decree had been made to wipe out all the Jewish people in the nation. And this was a wide and vast nation. And the king didn't know she was Jewish. And they said, you need to go and ask him to intercede and not have us destroyed. She said, I'll only do it on one condition. That all of you will fast and pray for 3 days. No food, no water, no nothing. I'll do the same thing, and so will people, so will my servants. And then I'll be ready. So sometimes fasting is for preparation. Even today, a lot of people know what's called the Daniel fast. You drink nothing but water. You eat nothing but fruit and vegetables for a while. Daniel had been taken into captivity in Babylon, and he was told, we're going to prepare you for the emperor's service. And they were to be fed all the food that the emperor ate, which violated a lot of the Jewish dietary customs. Daniel had three guys with him. It's always good to have backup. And said, we don't want to do that. Just give us water, some vegetables, and some fruit. And that'll be enough. Well, the guy put an answer. Well, if you don't eat everything, if you don't eat peacock tongues and you don't eat all this other stuff, you're just not gonna. You're not gonna look good for the emperor. So give us 10 days. 10 days. Just water, fruit, vegetables. So there's a lot of restrictions on the different kinds of meat you can eat in the Jewish customs. After that 10 days, they were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They looked better than any of the other ones around. All the ones that just caved in and said, yeah, we'll do whatever you want us to do. So sometimes it's for purification. In Matthew chapter 4, we see Jesus is baptized. And as soon as he's baptized, as soon as God has opened the heavens and the dove has come down upon him, he goes out into the desert to fast for 40 days and 40 nights. At the end of that time, the obvious is stated. He said he was hungry. And at that time was a time of temptation for him. The devil just came right to him and said, I tempted him in 3 different ways. And I've talked about that recently. But that 40 days in the wilderness, not even thinking about food, not even thinking about that, was his time of preparation for his ministry. It was a time when he could just focus on what God would have him to do. And then there was that temptation to do it his own way, but he surrendered to God's will, to his Father's will. In Mark, we read also, I lost my sheet. In Mark, we see that the disciples were starting to do the ministry, and they had already cast out infirmities, and they'd cast out spirits, and they'd done all these things, but they had run into a situation where they couldn't handle it. They had tried, they had to cast out this demon of a deaf, mute child. And they didn't have the strength, the power to do it. They brought the child to Jesus. And Jesus said, get out and don't come back. And did. And after a while, behind the scenes later, we see the apostles say, why weren't we able to do that? We've done others before. We've done very similar situations. Why couldn't we do that one? Said, that one took prayer and fasting. It took preparation before you went into that battle. You had to be ready for it. In Luke, we see that Jesus had people coming to him. Now, they were still within the Jewish community, but they were with people who had somewhat betrayed the Jewish people by becoming Roman tax collectors. Or they had been people who they missed synagogue now and then. They weren't strict adherents to all the extra rules that went about. And they asked, why aren't your disciples fasting? John's do. The rabbis and the Pharisees all do. Why aren't yours? And Jesus said, they are celebrating now because I'm here. After I'm gone, and he's predicting his crucifixion and his resurrection and his ascension, after I'm gone, then they will have a time of prayer and fasting. It was not something extra. It was an expectation that we would take time at different times. Now, Matthew 6, we get the way not to do it. We're not supposed to just brag about it. Hey, I'm fasting. Now we do want to share it with certain people. We want to share, hey, look, I won't be able to come to lunch on Thursday because that's my day to just kind of skip eating. And we want to share it, especially within our household, so they know what's going on. It's just I don't like your cooking anymore. It's what I do, and we don't want to brag about it. If somebody wants to know about it, we can share with them. If you choose to fast, you need to prepare yourself for it. If you are diabetic or something, you'll be wanting to check your blood sugar levels at different times, things like that. If you're under a doctor's close care, just let them know what you're doing, and they may give you some guidance. But just consider it. How much time do we spend each day eating meals? You know, I usually eat 3 to 4 plus snacks. If we take that time for prayer. Recently, I've talked about prayer, both active prayer and just paying attention to how God's trying to talk to us. Fasting is a way to kind of amplify that. You have a little more time to listen. You have a little more time to focus on the prayers. Our prayer list is getting quite long. There's a lot of people out there. The one family that I visited in the emergency room was still in the emergency room because they couldn't find a bed in the hospital for them. Another family recently that I visited got the last room in the intensive care unit. And I was talking with one of the nurses, and because I've been visiting hospitals for many years, I said it's not that unusual for ICU to be filled up. during COVID, they made a big deal out of it every time it got full, but I know there are certain seasons when it gets full. She said, well, that's true, but since COVID, we've got 50% more beds than we used to. We expanded our ICU unit. It was still full. There are people to pray for. There are ministries within this county. You know, if I don't go to McDonald's for breakfast and get my sausage, egg McGriddle, hold the cheese, I could send a couple of bucks over to the Hope Center or the Help Center, either one of them. I want to encourage you to consider one day a week during Lent. It's about 5 weeks. 6 weeks. Take them one day a week and just skip a meal or 2 or 3, or skip all your snacks instead, to help you focus on prayer.